What's become really difficult, the higher you scale and the bigger you scale, is finding individuals who you can associate with, because I do believe that your net worth is determined by the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it's very difficult to find 5 people who are CEOs of $100 million companies or more who want to spend time with me anyway. They're usually spending time with people who have bigger goals than they have. So that is a very big challenge to rewrite your framework. So what I do is I try and find good people who have good morals and who are really supportive and uplifting, and try and spend my time the most with them. People who are destructive, I got to cut them out of my life. And that's unfortunate, because at the same time, while you're doing that, they're like, you've changed. And it sounds like it's because you're greedy. It's not. You don't want the money. You just don't want their negative attitude in your mind. You want to try and help them as much as you can. But a lot of times people, it's like the old analogy of crabs in a bucket. They try and pull you down. By the way, crabs don't act like that. You see videos of it, but really it's an appropriate example to say that people will try and pull you down. In fact, another example is, how do you build the tallest building in a city? You build a building and then you tear everything else down. That's what can happen. And they don't do it on purpose. They're not bad people. It's just that it threatens people when you become really focused on your success and your ability to give back, and you're doing the things they wish they could do. You've made the decisions to do it. They're maybe not willing to make those sacrifices and decisions because their image isn't there. They may be the B person right now, and that's okay for them. But, don't rain on somebody else's parade. If they want more for themselves, their family, and their community to give back to, don't pull them down. So for me, as far as the social group that I'm around, it is very difficult to find people who are like-minded, who uplift, who maybe share your same values too. That's a tough thing, because also at that level, not everybody has a good marriage. Not everybody has healthy friends, healthy kids. That's all important. That's all more important than having a great business, is a healthy marriage, healthy relationship with your kids who are on the right track. And so you've got to make sure that's there too before you try and get to that next level for yourself. When you get to a certain level, it becomes more difficult. Daniel Marcos, my business coach, said that he knows someone who's a coach to billionaires. And the biggest question that billionaires have is, who are their real friends? Because on the way to $1 billion, they hired all their friends. And then the relationships become transactional. And so that's one thing that you've got to be careful of, because you could have a lot of friends and you take them on your jet and you go to nice vacations and they'll all be really nice to you, until maybe you have a disagreement. Unfortunately, I've had friends who've worked for me that they get a sense of entitlement to whatever your results are. And then they say, hey, help me out. I need money here. I need money there. Or they give you bills for work they didn't do and things like that. These all have happened. And it's unfortunate. So yeah, I say it's lonely at the top, but the truth is you choose to be at the top. You have to make a decision. So I'm not going to cry about that. I'm just going to try and find more supportive relationships and help support other people. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and give back to people so they can learn the lessons and maybe avoid some of the hardships on that path and some of the disappointments. I'm not crying. Nobody's crying over, poor Greg doesn't have any friends. But what I do want is to be able to find good people that I can give back to through knowledge and wisdom if I can. So that's what I focus on, and maybe not the absence of other people. Michelle Obama, I think she said that as she and Barack Obama, president, climbed their mountain of success, there were break points of the air thinning, so to speak. I think it was Michelle Obama said this. And they just had to let people go, because as you get more and more successful, people, either they're threatened or they just can't keep up with you. And it's not that you break up with them per se, we just let them go. And you relate to them at wherever you find them, and you want to be good with them and nice with them, but you spend less time with them than you would spend with them before, maybe when it was okay at whatever their level they're at. But you've got an objective and a goal for your life, and a certain goal to give back and help people. It's sometimes hard to get everyone on board with that vision. And there's some people in your life you're going to have to let go. The Bible talks about God the Father giving us, Jesus talks and says to us, what parent would give their child a stone if they're asking for bread? What would give them a serpent if they wanted a fish? And the truth is, money can actually be very damaging if you're not prepared to deal with it. We see this in Hollywood with celebrities, with musicians and athletes who they have tremendous fame and wealth all of a sudden, and then they fall apart because they can't manage it. There is a path that you have to follow with responsibility and growing as a human being and growing spiritually and mental toughness and all those things to be able to handle this amount of wealth. And what happens is, if it comes too fast, it can damage you. And that's something where, like with my kids, particularly my oldest daughter, she's 17, she's starting to date now. I want to be very careful who she dates, because when she gets to be 25, 26, 27 years old, and they're talking about the family trust and all those things, that can be a problem. It can be. And so those are issues that you want to make sure that the values of the people that they're associating with are the same values that you have. And that's also a challenge, that you want to make sure you raise your kids, but also that they understand what your values are. the importance of giving back, but not just giving away. I don't agree with socialism, but I do want to give back to the poor communities that internationally, even where some kids just don't even have a chance. You want to feed the poor. That's what we're commanded to do, actually, biblically. So I want to make sure that happens, but at the same time, be smart about it. One of the most painful times that I've experienced has been when I have people who are friends and they get into a crisis. It could be a financial crisis. It could be a marriage crisis. It could be a health crisis. And usually what happens with me is it's a financial crisis because I'm a person of some means. So they come and the finances become an issue. And when we talk about the A versus the B person, you've got the person who you are in your flesh, and you've got the A person who you're becoming. Many times, Steve Harvey says that money doesn't change somebody's character, it reveals who they really are. And times of crisis also reveal who people really are. And that's something that can be very painful. I'm very cautious to give somebody the stamp of approval if I haven't seen them come through a crisis, because in the crisis is when they start doing things like manipulation, guilt trip, attacks, other things on their friends, their family, and other things like that. So I just recommend in relationships with people, you have to be very careful to say you feel like you know them until you've seen them through a crisis, because in a crisis is when you see what somebody's really made of and who they really are. You have to be very careful about that and letting them into your inner circle, because in the time of crisis, they could do a lot of damage if they haven't been tested before that. The interesting question is what happens to your friends when they go through a crisis and whether you help them through it or not. And this is a very delicate balance, because if they're in a crisis, it may be a crisis of their own making, actually. This may be something that they've gotten themselves into. And it's very hard. People don't ask for advice. You can't give people advice. When you say help them through it, could you write a check and get them out of the crisis? Maybe. But does that really help them? That just sets them up for a bigger crisis later on. So you've got to be very careful and delicate. If they ask for your help, then obviously I would give somebody help, certainly advice, and be mindful of that. But if the Bible says don't cast your pearls before pigs and dogs, the answer to that is if they take the advice and they see they're trying, then maybe continue to help them. But many times people want to ask for advice. A business guy came to me for advice a few months ago, and I gave him what I think was a great answer. And then he asked like 12 other people and kept asking. And I'm like, at some point, you've got to pick the advice you want to follow and follow it, not just make this into a drama crisis about yourself. If you're in a crisis, be careful who you ask for help. And if you ask for help, the people who you trust their advice, do what they tell you to do, right? Figure out how to make it work. And if you're helping somebody through a crisis, make sure that you protect yourself. Don't waste a lot of time and energy, because we all want to try and save everybody else around us. And that can ultimately become destructive for us if we don't have the right boundaries and the right fences set up in our lives. You don't have to save everybody, and everybody's not your job to save. Hey, so if you like today's video, share, like, and subscribe.